Before we start to solve for unknown sides in example 4, we must first know how we can use the calculator to help us in this particular chapter. As we are computing the values of angles in degrees, you must always remember to set the mode of your calculator to degree, and you can see it on the calculator screen as DEG. You can now follow the instructions provided in example 3. Just look at the orange boxes and key in accordingly. You should be able to find the answer. The answer may not be a whole number all the time, and you will need to round it off to 3 significant figures. Spend 10 minutes doing example 3 and practice question 4 before you proceed to example 4. Pause the video now. In the following example 4, we are trying to see how we can use Tuakaso to help us solve for the unknown side x centimeters. The first thing you must take note is the reference angle, and it is given to us in the question as 62 degrees. After you have identified the reference angle, you have to label the hypotenuse, opposite, and adjacent. Hypotenuse will always come first, and it is the side opposite the right angle. Opposite is the side which is directly opposite the reference angle, and I will use O to represent. And the last unknown side will always be the adjacent and next to the reference angle. Once we have established this, we will now decide whether to use tangent, cosine, or sine to help us solve for x. Since we are trying to solve for x centimeters, and we are only given the hypotenuse as 13.5 centimeters, we can only play with adjacent and hypotenuse. Now look, tangent theta involves opposite and adjacent, and we don't have opposite, so tangent is out. Same for sine, as we don't have opposite. That leaves us with cosine, as we only have adjacent and hypotenuse. Once we have established to use cosine theta, we will now write down the equation. Theta is 62 degrees, and we must have adjacent, which is A over H, x over 13.5. Now we will solve for x, and how do we solve for x? We will multiply 13.5 on both sides. Always remember to label the units for degrees, and we always put length in front of cosine because we want to differentiate between angles and length. If we were to put 13.5 behind, it would be very confusing. Now press the calculator, and you should be able to get 6.34 as your answer. Since we are looking for value, the answer should be 6.34 without centimeters. And round it off to 3 sig fig. Let's look at example 5. First step is to identify the reference angle, and now we will have to label the hypotenuse, the opposite, and lastly the adjacent. Now you must write down Tuakaso at the side to help yourself decide which one to use. Since we have opposite and adjacent, you can see that we only need O and A, and we can easily select TOA, which is tangent, and use tangent to help us solve for x. Once we have decided on tangent, we can now write down the equation. The reference angle is 49 degrees, and it is always O over A, which is represented by x over 11.3. We will use the same method of solving by multiplying 11.3 on both sides and make x the subject. Now, I want you to press the calculator, and you should be able to get 13.0 as your answer when rounded off to 3 sig feet. Since we are only finding the value, there shouldn't be any units in your final answer. Let us now look at example 6. Similarly, you should also know where your reference angle is, and it is 35.3 degrees. Next, identify the hypotenuse and label it on the diagram. Opposite, and lastly, adjacent. Once you have done these, you can now decide whether you want to use tangent, cosine, or sine to help you. If I were to look at the diagram, I know that I have the hypotenuse given to me, and I need to find the opposite. I will choose sine because in sine, I will need opposite over hypotenuse. And I will now write down the equation. Opposite is x and hypotenuse is 10.1. I will make x a subject, and I will press the calculator to find the answer. You should be able to get 5.84 as your answer when you round off to 3 sig feet. In conclusion, you have to decide on whether you want to use tangent, cosine, or sine based on what information is given. I want you to now try practice question 5, and after you have tried practice question 5, attempt the homework textbook questions as seen on the bottom of the page. Thank you.